when I first learned about business credit cards. And I'm thinking, okay, if Bank of America have 4 business credit cards, and if I have 10 entities, that's 4 0% interest credit cards from Bank of America. Now, I'm gonna say this. You cannot get them all at one time, but you would never run out of 0% interest credit card, right? So I'm not sure. I think right now at a time, I might have maybe about 10 Bank of America, right? So once my 0% interest run out, I can close those out and go on to the next business.
Hey business owners, what if I helped you get access to $50,000 in business funding for $1 a day? Would you be interested? Well, inside of my credit mastery community, you're going to be getting exclusive access to our in-depth training program that's worth tens of thousands of dollars to give you the exact strategies you need on how to restore your credit and on how to properly structure your business. You're also going to be getting access to a financial consultant with over a decade of experience in the funding space that'll help you reach your financial goals in half the time it would take if you were to do it on your own. And we're going to be giving you 2 coaching calls every week that'll give you the exact banks you need to go to get access to $50,000 to $100,000 in business funding. This is the same community that helped Pat get access to $50,000 in funding from Chase, helped Alvin get access to $8,000 in funding from Amex, helped Matt boost his personal credit score by 150 points, and helped Donna delete a bankruptcy from her credit report. So if you're interested, click the link above or below this video to join now, and we'll see you on the other side of success. Let's go, family.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Marvin Francois Show, your #1 source for all things business, finance, and investing. And today is a very special day because our guest today is a mentor, coach, entrepreneur, credit specialist, business funding expert, and real estate investor extraordinaire. She's the CEO of her own real estate empire and the visionary behind a funding framework that's helped everyday people across the country acquire properties, all without relying on traditional loans or their own cash. Her story begins in the projects of Harlem and rises to multi-million-dollar success using 0% business credit cards, creative funding plays, and faith-fueled execution to lead her family into legacy. Whether she's showing students how to turn credit into cash-flowing real estate or teaching them how to own free houses by letting tenants pay down 0% interest cards, her mission remains the same: to transform viewers like you from sitting on the financial shelf to beginning your journey towards building generational wealth. And today, she's here to do more of the same. Ladies and gentlemen, from Harlem, New York, by way of Snellville, Georgia, I'm here with the one, the only, my good friend, Mrs. Dana Christian. What's going on, family? How are you?
Fine. Thank you for that.
Of course. You're more than deserving of that. How are you? How's everything?
Good.
Fantastic. Happy to have you on. Me, you've been talking about bringing you on here for since 2023, 2022 maybe?
Yes, a long time.
What it is, Dana, you're just so busy. You over here moving and shaking, changing lives. So I knew I had to wait a little bit, but finally the stars aligned.
Yes.
We was able to make it happen and we're here. So happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
100%. I'm excited for this conversation. I know it's going to be one filled with a lot of fruit, a lot of value, and of course, just unpacking a lot for people who are watching, who want to be where you are, but don't really know how to necessarily get there. But before we get there, I think it's important that people understand who's sitting across from me right now, right? So for those who are unfamiliar, let's get them familiar. Who exactly is Mrs. Dana Christian?
So I'm a real estate investor coach that specializes in out-of-state Section 8 properties using business credit cards.
Simple and plain, just like that. I love it. Okay.
Yeah, straight.
All right, let's go back, right? Because I know, and you know better than I do, that it wasn't always like that.
Correct.
So before the success and when it comes to credit and real estate and beyond, what was life like for you in the early days growing up?
So I grew up in New York City, New York City projects. By the age of 17, I had 2 children, dropped out of high school in the 9th grade. And started working different jobs as cashiers. In 1996, I'm telling my age. All right.
It's all right. We're here.
So 1996, I started working for the post office.
Okay.
And in Westchester, New York, transferred down to Georgia in 2004. And it was 2006 where I started having anxiety attacks. And I needed to leave from out the post office. And I didn't know, what can I do? That was going to pay the same. So after watching HGTV, I got this bright idea that I can start investing in real estate.
Yeah.
And that's what started me on my journey investing in real estate.
Let's unpack the story a little bit more because like you said, you had a bit of a rocky start, right? It wasn't just sunshine and rainbows.
Oh, no.
around 17, of course, you have a situation where you bring 2 children into the world. What's going through your mind at that time? Because I know that would be difficult really for anybody.
Yeah. So at that time, it was really, how can I take care of these kids?
Right.
Right. So I was receiving public assistance, but of course that wasn't enough. And I remember one night, and I needed money for 2 boxes of Pampers. And I only had enough money for 1 box of Pampers. And I went in the bathroom and I started crying because I was a baby myself with babies. I went in the bathroom, started crying, and was ready to kill myself. And my oldest daughter started knocking on the bathroom door. And I said to myself, if I kill myself, who's going to take care of them? So I came out the bathroom, picked up my babies, put them in the double stroller, and proceeded to go to the store, thinking like, who do I buy Pampers for? Do I buy Pampers, a large box for my oldest daughter or a small box for my youngest daughter? I get in the store and I buy a medium box. That means it's too big for one child and too small for the other one. But that was a day that I realized that nobody was coming to save me.
Yeah.
And I had to do whatever I needed to do to take care of the kids. And from that point on, I honestly lived by any means necessary. Whatever I needed to do to take care of these kids, if it was working multiple jobs, like I said, I was receiving public assistance at that time. I even went across the street and got a job in Kentucky Fried Chicken under my sister name so I can keep my welfare benefits.
So you have this moment where you realize like you kind of have to just step up and be the mother you need to be for your children. And you're like, all right, I got to put some money in my bank account. Let me go ahead and find a job. You start off, like you said, you find a job at KFC, but then you transition over. I heard you mention something about the post office.
So the post office was like 1996. So we're talking about this time when this happened. This was like in 1987.
Got you. So how long in total were you at the post office for?
At the post office? I was at the post office. I started in 96 and I actually resigned in 2022.
Really?
2018, I had on-the-job injury and I went out of work. And 2020, when I went back to the doctor and he wanted me to have surgery on my other shoulder. And I said no. He told me to go back to work. But the reality of it was he judged me, right? Because I went to this appointment with my Rolex on, my Louis Vuitton bag, and my Louis Vuitton loafers. So he's thinking I'm living off of workman's comp. But we know that workman's comp don't pay that much.
At all.
He didn't know I was a real estate investor. He was like, well, you can go back to work. And I'm like, go back to work. And I just never went. And then, we have the haters. And when I call haters, everybody having anger towards anyone reaching success.
Right.
So my supervisor was watching my Facebook page and sent me a letter to come back to work. And I'm like, I'm not coming back to work. And that's how I was like, you know what, Dana, just resign because they haven't paid you in 2 years. And what are you holding on to? And I realized that I was holding on to fake security because I was making in my real estate career and through my funding and credit 20 times what I was making at the post office. But I was just holding on to the security blanket just in case this don't work out.
Right.
And it's all really a mindset thing. And it put me in the mindset, honestly, when I first got hired at the post office in 1996, the first thing I thought about was, they're going to cut my food stamps off. Right? Here it is. I'm getting ready to get this job paying me $30,000 a year, and I'm wanting about $286 in food stamps. So it was just, really growth and taking ownership and letting go. Right? Because sometimes we have to let go of the past, and sometimes we don't want to do it because it's scary.
Yeah.
And I realized it's really just a mental thing.
Why do you think, and that's so good, because like you talked about, your real estate journey started 2006.
Correct.
But you didn't walk away from your 9-to-5 until you said 2022 from what I was saying?
Correct, 2022.
And at that point, you're already crushing it in the real estate space, but still there was this mental block that for whatever reason, it was very difficult for you to get over that. I think a lot of people who are watching this episode right now also deal with it. Like there's somebody who maybe watched this episode right now who's exactly where you were in 2022, whether it's real estate, a consulting business, wherever it may be, and they're crushing it. But they're like, let me just stay at my 9-to-5 one more year, just another year, right? Because they feel like, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What did you have to unlearn to kind of overcome that mental hurdle yourself that other people can learn from if they're in the same position?
So really just believing in yourself, right? And I always use the acronym BET, right? So just believing. A lot of times we don't believe that we can make it without because we're so used to something, right? So just believing that you can make it without whatever situation you're dealing with, right? Because there's always better. And then E is for educate, right? Just educate yourself on what it is you need to do. And then T is for transform. So making that transition into your new space.
Yeah. So let's rewind a little bit. We double dutch in the story a little bit because I'm trying to get all little pieces. Let's go to 2006, where you start in the real estate space. At that time, you started in the post office in 1996.
Correct.
So 2006, you're a decade in the post office now.
Correct.
You start watching HGTV and you're like, I could do this. But at that point, you're tenured now. You've been in the same position at this job for 10 years and beyond. What are those conversations like early on with friends and family? Because, it's very tricky whenever you're trying to get into any form of investing or business and you don't come from that. Like the conversations aren't always going to be the most welcoming. Like you could do it. Some people going to be like, girl, you about to trying to mess up this retirement, Social Security. Like stay where you at, do what you've been doing. Was that your experience when you were first transitioning into the real estate space?
So yes and no in a sense, because my husband, we talked about it, so he was supportive. But any other family members, I didn't speak about it. So, and I have always just been that person because I don't want to hear a person's opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes what they think, and then it plants seeds in your head and you start doubting yourself. Right? So my husband was like, all right, let's do this. Right? So we went and got a realtor, found contractors, and took an equity line of credit from out our house, our primary residence. So that's the money we started with. And we fixed and flipped our first house. And we quickly learned that a television show wasn't going to teach us everything that we needed to know. And really, I gave myself another job, right? So we flipped that first house, and then we went into buying whole properties. Then that's the process of becoming a landlord, right? So we bought some buying whole properties. Again, back then, we only knew how to buy in our personal name. I didn't know anything about credit cards. I didn't know anything about hard money loans or anything like that. So after buying like 4 properties, we was kind of stuck. Right. So my plan was really to continue working at the post office, and we save $20,000 a year and buy a property every year. Right. But fast forward to 2017, when I had my first on the job injury, and I saw the way they acted, like I stole a stamp or something. And I'm like, I've been working here for years and you're acting like somebody lying. And then I got mad at myself because we didn't buy any properties from 2008 to 2018. We didn't buy any properties, and I got mad at myself because we had the money, but busy traveling, not going to work, like calling out sick without pay, because really the properties that I had gave me options. So options as to if I didn't feel like going to work, I wouldn't go to work. Like my base salary is like $50,000. I think I was making like $30,000 because I would constantly call out. So real estate kind of really just gave me those options. And then once I got injured, I had my first injury 2017. My second one was 2018, and that's when I actually went out of work.
You said something that made me kind of laugh internally, where you said when you and your husband, you leveraged equity line of credit from your house to your first deal, you learned very quickly that getting started in real estate, you had given yourself a second job.
Correct.
I think that's important because there's a lot of aspiring real estate investors who in their mind may think like, I'm going to get into this, I'm going to make $1 million on my first deal, and I'm going to hit this thing running, passive income, and you know better than I do, it ain't like that.
No.
Walk me a little bit more through the early days of you getting started in the real estate space, the stuff that doesn't make it to Instagram, that doesn't get talked about on social media.
Yeah. So we know it's 3 different strategies, right, that most people use. One is wholesaling, right? So that would be the process of finding a distressed property, putting it under contract, then selling that contract to an investor for a fee. Now, that is a second job because you have to make calls, you have to find these distressed buyers, right? So that's a second job. And then we have the fix and flip. You have to manage contractors. You have to kind of be on the scene. And that's what we did. That's a second job. So now buying whole, which is my favorite process, the process of becoming a landlord, now that's a little more passive. Right? Because once you find the house and you can get a property manager to manage it and they charge 10% what the rent is, now that's passive. So for that person that's working a job and still want to invest in real estate, I'm always going to say become a landlord.
So you also mentioned that the strategy for you and your husband at the time was we're going to save up $20,000 every year, and that's the $20,000 that we're going to use to buy a property. Because from what I understand at that time, you didn't really understand credit. So
Correct.
when did I understand the intro to real estate now. You talked about there was a period you weren't buying properties. You kind of look back like, dang, like it was all this time we could have been building on our portfolio even more. Where does the introduction to credit now happen where you're like, oh, this is a completely different ball game. It's time to run it up.
So it was 2017, 18 once started being on internet and going to real estate meetups.
Got it.
And joining actually was Will Roundtree that had spoke about business credit cards.
Right.
And him and Jay Morrison had a class, and I had joined online. And it was one night where we got a text message for everybody to come to a call, but they wasn't on the call. I guess it was an error. So it was different students that was on the call, and they were sharing information. So they started talking about business credit cards. I had no idea about business credit cards. So once we got off that call, I stayed up to 3 o'clock in the morning searching every bank that had business credit cards. So that was the intro, to it. And as far as about credit itself, only thing I knew about credit was always pay my bills on time and never co-sign for anyone. Because that's what my grandmother told me and gave me a Macy's credit card to shop for the girls when they needed clothes.
Yeah.
Right? So that was my real introduction once I started getting into mentorships.
So now you get the information. How did you now start going about using, getting access to credit, and then from there start using it to build your portfolio out even more? Walk me through that journey.
Okay, so after I researched all the banks that have business credit cards, right, the next week I started applying, right? I started applying. So as I was getting denied and less limits, I would look at my credit report and figure out, okay, so it's a sequence to it, right? So figure out, okay, so these banks pull from this credit bureau, right? And then I realized once I had 3 inquiries, I was getting denied or less, right? So then I know I needed to remove those inquiries to get more credit cards. And then now you cannot swipe a credit card at a title company, right? So I started investing out of state. And when I went to the Cleveland market, a lot of those properties was like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. And now this time I know about hard money lenders, but they didn't want to lend really under $100,000.
Yeah.
So I had to use the credit cards to buy the properties.
One of the things I hear, I know we both know and hear a lot with business credit is it's a great tool for leverage, but like you learned through your own firsthand experience and even now through the education you provide, any Tom, Dick, and Harry under the sun is not just going to walk into a bank and then they're going to give you $50,000 to $100,000. There's a lot of work that needs to be done before that. When you're speaking to a lot of the people that you're mentoring now, what are some of the actionable steps that you're giving them on the things they need to be doing with putting their credit in a position so that they can do what you did and are still doing, which is get access to the funding they need to leverage it to start investing?
So one is definitely pay your bills on time. If you have any negative items, go through the credit repair process, remove those items, keep your utilization as low as possible. 10% is ideal, and really build a relationship with banks, right? And when you think about that, what bank should I build a relationship with? Think about what the bank has to offer, right? Like Bank of America have 4 business credit cards. So that might be a bank where, okay, so let me put my money here because they're going to lend me money. Because it's not as easy as it was in 2020, 2022. So these banks, and even having as people say, these inside bankers, business bankers, they even being cautious as to who they lend to. Because one that I had at Chase, if your business is not making $1 million and have banks, he's not even jeopardizing his job, right? So, you can still get access to money because banks is in the business of lending money, but now you just have to build a relationship, right? So look for a community bank and see if they have business credit cards. Look for a regional bank and see how many business credit cards they have, and then a big bank, and just build a relationship with them. And something that I used to do, because I know somebody's saying, well, Dana, I don't have all this money put in all these bank accounts, but just move the money around. Right? So let's just say if you open up an account with, let's just say PNC and Bank of America. So let's just say you might take and put $5,000 in Bank of America. And on a Saturday, Tuesday, you take that out and put it in PNC and just keep on switching it around, because they're looking at the deposits, not really the withdrawals, long as it doesn't go into the negative. And just move that money around and just build that relationship with the banks.
This is okay. So now we're kind of starting to unpack it here. Do you personally, because you mentioned too, because I know this is going to be a very common question. Because we know we want to use the funding for real estate, from my experience, that real estate can be considered a high risk industry by a lot of these lenders. And I know this is going to be a comment we get because I can't have you on here. We talk about banks and people going to be like, well, Dana didn't talk about. No. How are you dealing with that? Because I know that that's a common thing that a lot of people who watch, who also are either in the real estate space or aspiring to be in the space, may be running into. Is that an issue that you've seen that's hampered your ability? And if not, what are you doing to work around that?
So when you're setting up your entity, stay away from those high risk names. Anything real estate, right? So, you want to use like a consultant, enterprises, management, right? So management is really good right now in marketing and education because even consultant done get kind of where the banks won't open up to consultant, right? So you can have an entity that's just for funding, right? And then you can have your properties in a different LLC name.
Okay. So we make sure our personal credit is where it needs to be. Then we go out and establish these relationships with these lenders. And we essentially have two different entities, one that's specifically for doing business and one that's responsible for getting access to the capital. Okay, so this is good. Now, as we start to like veer a little bit more into understanding the business credit side, what, from your experience, because you mentor a lot of different individuals in the space, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you normally see people making before they get to you, by the time they get to you? So are you looking at them like, hey, what are you doing? Why would you even do that when it comes to the business credit side?
So one would be using your home address.
Okay.
Or using a P.O. box and trying to use the street address as that address, right? And a lot of times when you put that address on the application, especially like PNC, it will tell you that's a post office box. So mainly the wrong name in the address.
Hey business owners, imagine being able to walk in and out of banks and starting to see approvals instead of rejections. And it's not because you changed anything with your business, but because you put your personal credit report in the position it needed to be in. Here at Takeoff Financial, our team helps business owners just like you using consumer law strategies that'll get real results in real time. We remove collections, charge-offs, late payments, evictions, delinquent student loans, along with anything else that's keeping you from getting to your funding goals. And best of all, it's completely done for you. We send the disputes, file the complaints, and do everything needed to help put you in position to access your first $50,000 to $100,000 in business credit. So if you're interested, head over to takeoffinancial.com or click the link in the description below to book a free consultation with me and my team to learn more about how we can help you get one step closer to your funding goals.
How are you personally going about now structuring? Because you mentioned one where you talked about the name. And you talked about the address just now. What are some of the other parts that you prioritize or you're teaching your students to prioritize when creating that business, the entity before you go and get it funded?
So not using a high risk name.
Yep.
The address, getting the DUNS number from Duns and Bradstreet, getting a professional email address, right? Okay. So the email address should not end in Yahoo or Gmail, right? So you can go to GoDaddy, get an email address for maybe under $20. Maybe even setting up a basic one-page website, right? Because we want to look like a business, right? And not really play business. And for a person that comes to me and say they already have something real estate in their name, so I just tell them to change their NAC code to property management. And usually that will allow them to get funding. Right. So I always say that it's not that you cannot get funding if you have a strong personal credit profile, but the amount you're going to get is less.
One of the things I also hear individuals talk about is having multiple, not just one entity, but multiple. I've even heard you talk about this.
Yeah. Soon as I learned about business credit cards, right away I set up 10 entities.
All right, let me put my iPad down because we got to talk about this. How many do you have now?
So right now, probably about 17.
Okay.
I have a lot.
Okay, break down why it's important for you to have as many as you do.
Okay, so when I first learned about business credit cards, and I'm thinking, okay, if Bank of America have 4 business credit cards, and if I have 10 entities, that's 4 0% interest credit cards from Bank of America. Now, I'm going to say this. You cannot get them all at one time, but you would never run out of 0% interest credit cards. Right. So I'm not sure. I think right now at a time I might have maybe about 10 business Bank of America. Right. So once my 0% interest run out, I can close those out and go on to the next business.
So essentially, what this strategy allows for you to do is always make sure you have some type of interest-free money that's ready to
Correct.
go for you to facilitate these deals.
Correct.
So that way, whenever you're borrowing this money, it's always free money that you're now using to because real estate is it's not an in and out. A lot of times you may get into a project or a deal that takes, you thought it was going to take 30 days, it takes 90 days. So you essentially always have a little backup.
Correct.
Lock, loaded, ready to go.
Correct.
This is very, very good. Now, does the state that you have the businesses in, because I know you, like I mentioned earlier, you're originally from New York, now you're in Georgia. Does the state that you have the entities in matter for what you're doing?
So whatever, yes and no, right? So whatever state you plan on buying properties in, you have to have an entity in that state.
Got it.
But I originated all my entities in Georgia, right? As a farm, as a domestic. And then some of them I just registered like in Cleveland, Baltimore, and Detroit as a farming entity.
Because of the nature of real estate, it is when you're making the purchases for these properties, you technically need cash, right? But we have credit. One of the things I've heard you talk about I hear a lot of people in the real estate space talk about is just the importance of being able to take the money off of cards, which I know is why sometimes people can look into lines of credit, but with that's a little bit multifaceted. What are some of the different things are there still effective ways for us to be able to take the money off the cards that we're getting so that we can actually use it to invest in real estate?
Yes, I use plastic.
Okay.
But you only can send the money to the title company. You have to have like proof where the money is going.
Got
so
you.
you can't take the money off of plastic and put it into your own personal bank account or your business bank account. But you can wire it directly to the title company.
Got you. And the reason I asked is because I've heard some like mixed reviews. Like today I'll hear, hey, this is the most effective way for you to get money off the card so you can invest. And then tomorrow it's like, yo, it's dead. It's done. You can't do it no more. Because people hear it, especially on platforms like this, they're like, all right, plastic. All right, I'm about to go and do what I got to do. So I want to make sure as of today, plastic still.
So you know why plastic is still good? Because it have to be a real transaction, right? So some of those plays like that manufactured spending, with people switching up the cars and all of that craziness, but plastic is a business and they making money 3%, right? So they tell you the do's and don'ts, right? So you can't put the money in your account. They're going to verify that it's a real transaction, right? So they want to see the HUD statement. They sending the money directly to the title company. So they verifying where the money goes. So this is their business, right? And they're going to charge you 3%, but you keep your 0% interest credit cards.
I want to swing a little bit over to the real estate side now. So for me, doing a bit of research into you, from what I understand, you don't simply just invest in the Georgia area.
Oh, no.
So you have properties scattered a bit. Why is that you invest out of state versus strictly just like, all right, I'm going to be in Georgia or I'm going to be in New York?
Well, New York, definitely not. Because properties is too expensive here, right? So I'm going where the properties is cheaper at, right? So it was in 2018. I was at a real estate meetup. And someone mentioned about the properties being cheaper in Baltimore than in Georgia. And the rents was higher. So I started searching out properties in Baltimore and purchased my first property in Baltimore sight unseen. I did my online research from an auction, Alex and Cooper. I purchased the property. Well, I bid it $70,000, won the bid. At the time, the property was worth $134,000. It was a tenant living in it, paying $1,200. This was June 29th, 2018. The tenant is still in that house. She pays every month on time. Then I went into the Cleveland market, right? Because it's cheaper. So let's talk about Georgia. The cheapest I have seen a property in the Metro Atlanta area is maybe like $250,000, and you can get $2,500. So it meets the 1% rule, right? Because your rent should be 1% of the purchase price. But now I can go to Cleveland and buy a single family for $75,000 and collect $1,500. So you see the price to rent ratio is higher. So that $250,000 that I'm spending in Georgia, I can almost get 4 houses for the same price, and probably could get 4 houses for that same price, really.
Do you think with out-of-state investing, it's interesting because, and I love talking about that whenever I bring people on this space because I never get the same answer twice. Some people love it, other people hate it. Not hate it, but they're like, be very cautious with it. Have you run into what is your overall experience been? Obviously, from a number standpoint, it makes sense. But just from the overall experience of management, of dealing with tenants, dealing with different contractors. That's a whole thing. How has that experience been for you? Because you're not there with these properties, but they're still your babies, is bringing in cash flow. What's that been for you?
So I'm going to say the same problems that you can have in state, you can have out of state.
Yeah.
Right. So that doesn't really make a difference. So it's really about really just building a team of people that you can trust. And I always tell people, if you decide to invest out of state, then buy rent ready property so you don't have to manage a contractor. And then you get a property manager to manage it for you, and you just stay on top of them. So honestly, I haven't had any bad experience with property managers. Of course, you might run into things, but it's nothing where I'm throwing in the towel.
Yeah.
You know, like a property manager might have lied. I caught him in a lie saying that the rent was $1,250 when it was really $1,350. You know, so of course he actually fired me when I got on him and I had to find somebody else. But it's nothing to where I'm going to throw in the towel, right? Because the pros definitely outweigh the cons. In any situation, always going to be cons. You know, and I always tell people, most people go to a job that they hate. But you get up and go every day waiting to retire after 30 years. But when it's time to invest, which, you know, is something that can change your bloodline, you have all the reasons why you shouldn't do it, why it won't work.
So if I'm putting myself in the situation, right, and I just got access to the capital using a lot of pretty much the framework you just broke down earlier. I want to get started in real estate. I don't know anything, right? I know I'm starting from ground zero and I'm coming to you. What counsel are you typically providing a lot of people who want to get in this space on some of the first steps that they should take to get started in securing their first property?
So first I'm going to say, what resources do you have, right? As far as like how much money you have, your credit, and how much time you have. So your time really will dictate what strategy you should use, right? So if you are a person that decide that you want to invest out of state, then I'm going to say do buy and hold properties, right? Because you don't have to worry about finding a contractor. You don't have to worry about running back and forth, right? So, and a lot of the due diligence can be done online. I have a mentee that have purchased I think she up to 6 properties in Detroit. She live in Louisiana and never even been to Detroit. Right. So, you know, she have a trusted realtor that's going to send her pictures and videos, and the properties is rented to Section 8. So she's receiving guaranteed rental income.
Speaking of Section 8, and you beat me to it because I know that's one of the more common ways I've heard about, okay, once the property is secured, this is a program you could use to essentially get tenants in the door. Where do you stand when it comes to using Section 8 in the real estate space as well?
So I have half and half.
Okay.
Right. So now all my units is on Section 8, but I do like Section 8 is guaranteed rent. And a lot of times you can get higher rent, right? So I have this 5-unit in Cleveland that I was going to rent out for $850. And Section 8 gave me $1,553. So who you think I'm going with?
Listen, man. Section 8, if you're watching this, you know we need sponsors.
Yes, they're going in Section 8. But again, all my tenants is in Section 8. Like a property I have in Baltimore, the one that I purchased in 2018, that's a cash tenant. She pays every month on time without a problem. Right? So a lot of times people think, well, if you're investing out of state, do Section 8. It doesn't matter, you know, whichever one you choose, because people always need a place to live, 100%. Regardless. 100%. Right? So, and then we hear they cut in Section 8. Right? So Trump proposed the same thing in 2017. It didn't pass. And let's just say they do cut it, right? And they're saying 40%. And there's 5 million people on Section 8. If they cut it by 40%, that's still 3 million vouchers. Yeah. Right? Who's buying how many houses people buying? Maybe 30, 300. That's not even 1%. You know what I'm saying? So, and still the bottom line is people still need a place to live. Even if you choose not to rent to Section 8 and you choose cash tenants, people still need a place to live regardless. What are some of the different mistakes you see certain investors that come through your program make early on that you kind of help them navigate away from when they're getting started in this space? Not knowing how to analyze a deal. Break that down. And so, like we spoke about the 1% rule, right? Even though I don't really do the 1% rule because of the market I'm in, it's more like a 2 to 3% rule, and I'm buying on return on investment. But so many times a person might buy a property, because one girl came to me and she bought a property in Texas, and I think the property was like almost $500,000. Okay. And the mortgage might have been like $4,500, and I think she was collecting $46,000. And I said, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
One, you got to self-manage, right? Because you're not making money to pay a property manager. And then if that person move out, you have to cover it, right? So a lot of times people, not thinking about the return on investment or just want to stay in their market where it's too expensive, or even, again, buying properties where it's not cash flowing enough to make sense.
And I've actually heard another investor, a gentleman in Philly, my guy Workout, shout out to him. One of the things he talks a lot about, to your point, is a lot of times you have certain investors that are coming in and they're so hyper focused on like equity that they forget like, hey, this is still a business, and cash flow is really where it's going to be important, because God forbid a pipe bust, there's a leak in the roof, you have a layover with a tenant, or tenant just wake up one day and be like, you know what, I don't feel like paying rent for the next 6 months. You need to make sure you have that nest egg that's there, and if your margins is this thin, hey, you sneeze, it's over.
Yeah, but there are, I always say, there's two reasons people invest in real estate. One is cash flow, and some people is tax benefits, and that's when appreciation will come in, right? Because if you are really cash heavy, then you're just investing in real estate to park your money to save on taxes.
Yeah.
Right? And then as the house the property appreciate, then you would sell it and make your money, right? And I remember back in 2008, and we used to go to auctions, and, I would have my set number. And I'm like, why are these people bidding so much on these properties? But I had to stay my course. But then I realized they dealing with a different type of money, right? Yeah. Because let's just say a person that have millions in the bank, right, might buy a property for $300,000. And let's just say if they cash flowing even $2,000 in rent, what's that return, right, compared to being in the bank? If they $300,000 sitting in the bank, they getting 1%. So right there, off the top of my head, that might be like 8%. You know what I'm saying? So it makes more sense. And plus, their money is going to grow. So that's $300,000, and maybe 5 to 10 years might be $500,000. And plus, they getting that money every month.
You mentioned something that was also key too, because I've sat down with our investors, and one of the things I hear about, like you just mentioned, is the tax benefit. How have you been able to leverage your portfolio up? If you don't mind me asking, how many properties are you at now?
60.
60. You can't just throw that number out there. You gotta be like, you ready? 60. You can't just, all right, okay, 60, cool. Spread out all over. So with the portfolio you've built now, how have you used that to your advantage from a taxation standpoint? Is it essentially used to kind of lower your tax bill from other businesses that you may have? Break that down for me.
Yeah, definitely lower my tax bill, right? Because unlike when you buy your primary resident, you only can write off the interest, right? But when you buy an investment property, you can write off the cost of the property. So if I paid $100,000 for a property, I can write that off against my taxes. In addition to all the other fees when I travel, to these different states. Even if I stay out there, for 5 days and I need to go shopping, because I'm not, all that stuff is a tax write-off that, you can write off. So it definitely lowers the tax bill.
Going back to one of the things you mentioned earlier that I want to make sure we don't leave on that stone unturned. You talked about one of the bigger mistakes newer investors make is they don't know how to analyze a deal. For you personally, are there key numbers that you're looking at when you're looking at a deal to know if it's for you or if it's not for you?
So what I'm going to see how much rent I can collect, right? So I want to figure out what is my return on investment. So you want to find out your yearly net operating income. So you take whatever the rent is minus the expenses. And if you don't know the expenses, that's fine. Just whatever you collect in rent, right? So for even number 6, let's just say I'm collecting $1,000 in rent. I'm going to multiply that by 12.
Okay.
And then I'm going to divide it by my all-in costs. And that's going to give you a return on investment. So ideal return on investment is without expenses, I want to be at least at 16% or higher. With expenses, probably about 12 or 13. But honestly, going out of state in the Midwest, you're at 18, 20, 30% return on investment.
This is good. This is good. What is we talk about the good, and you talked about some of the lumps you took earlier on. What would you say to date is the biggest loss you've taken in the real estate space to date?
The biggest loss?
Attention business owners, are you tired of getting denied for business credit because your personal credit is still holding you back? You have the business, you have the vision, but every single time that you apply, lenders hit you with the same brick wall time after time again, your credit report. You see, here at Takeoff Financial, we use advanced consumer law strategies to get every negative item removed from your credit report. Things like collections, charge-offs, late payments, delinquent student loans, and so much more. And best of all, it's fully done for you. Our team sends out the dispute letters, files the complaints, and handles everything needed to get your credit to the finish line, which means you don't have to lift a finger, and we'll do all the heavy lifting needed to put you in position to finally get approved for business credit. So if you're ready to stop getting denied and start getting funded, head over to takeofffinancial.com to book a free consultation with me and my team to see how we can put you in position to get one step closer to your funding goals.
I would say you have to go back to 2006.
When early on. When
Yeah, I was. Yeah, and I would say because I didn't have the knowledge, and I just knew that I was gonna make like $100,000 off this property, right? And so we made like $17,000. So that would be the biggest loss. I can't really think anything else. You know, projects taking long, I wouldn't really call that a loss.
Okay.
Right? You know, when I first went to Cleveland and I wanted to be that lazy investor, I just wanted to put my money and let somebody else do the work. And the project took like 18 months. Right? But it's still, you know, I still got a finished product, you know, with tenants, you know, paying. So I wouldn't really say that was a loss.
The reason why I asked is because listening to your journey, it's so interesting to see where you started, to see how far you come. You know, like you said, getting started in 2006. What's interesting is you mentioned at the time in 2006, you started with your husband, right? It wasn't a journey that you entered in on your own. From then until now, if you think back to 2006, how have the conversations around just building wealth and investing between you and him evolved from 2006 up until now?
Just creating more businesses, and you know, like I want to come back to Georgia to invest.
Okay.
Right, and he wants us to stay out of state, right, because the properties is cheaper. And I think that since 2017, we've been buying in the inner city. So I want to come out of the inner city, right? Because now I'm just looking at, I want the houses to appreciate faster.
Yeah.
Right? So inner city is always cash flow, right? So you're going to get more cash flow. But now I think where I'm at, I want more of the appreciation long term, right? And so I just thought about something, right?
Talk to me.
So in 2008, and we had went to an auction in Atlanta. And everything we went to go get, we got outbid. And I'm like, I'm leaving here with something. And we used to drive around for dollars. That's when you drive around looking for vacant properties. And we knew this street. So they gave you a list of houses. And we saw this house, Irish Street. So we was like, oh, we know that every day doing rehabs over there. And on the paper, it said the house was worth $365,000. So we bid it $87,000 for this property. After the auction, we so excited. So we go driving to go see this property. So we driving down Irish Street, cross over the railroad tracks. Get to this block of Irish Street. It was 4 houses on the block. We was like, what did we just buy? We put a foreman sign in the ground. Somebody came to see it. She was happy that it had ceiling fans. She was ecstatic it had a dishwasher. We looking at each other like, this block. She stayed in our property for about 16 years. The only reason she moved, and I didn't go up, I was just so happy to have her there. We didn't go up on the rent, right? So, but in when we asked her to move, 2020, we told her we were selling it. Because back then I bought it in my personal name. So we sold it to our business. We rehabbed it, and the house got appraised for over $500,000. Right? So back then that was a mistake because, again, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
You know, but it worked out years later. So even if you make a mistake in real estate, it can always turn around, right? If you just hold on to the property.
Powerful. And I think that's the reason why I asked that question, is just because seeing you is very dope for me, because I'm sure you see and speak with a lot of other women who are also, even outside of real estate, that just want to get started in business and entrepreneurship. And they may not necessarily have the same type of support that you had early on, where it's like they're going to their husbands and they're like, hey, I want to do X. The husband's like, absolutely not. What are those kind of conversations that you're having with those individuals on how to navigate that space that they're currently in?
So I don't never tell somebody to go against their mate. Right? And just pray on it. And that's a decision, excuse me, that's a decision that you have to make for yourself. Right? But I'm like, you can do it. Right? You can do it. I have a lot of women that comes through my programs that's single, that's out here killing it. But you just have to believe. Or get a partner, another female that's in the group and your partner up to encourage each other. But I would never say like, if your husband said don't do it, then don't do it. But that's something that, you decide have to do.
Were there things that you were doing then and even now? I know obviously both your daughters are grown, but from then until now, were there things that you and your husband were doing along this journey to kind of also start to instill that mindset of investing and building wealth into them? Because they got front row seats and watching you take these lumps and bumps and bruises in this space. So they're learning by just, all right, mom is doing this and dad is doing that. But the conversations and maybe other things you're doing on top of that to start preparing them so where when you're not here, hey, my kids are taken care of. They know what to do.
So, honestly, I make them sit through my mentorship.
Okay.
So, no, for real. So, and my daughters would tell you, sit through them every call. I've been mentoring since early 2020. Every call they sit in.
Still
to this day.
Yeah, I don't know about that. You
just sit through the calls.
Okay.
Right? Because like you said, like you can give a child money or throw them, give them the houses and they end up, selling it and stuff like that. But sit there and really just get the knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? And always lead by, example. Now, the girls is good. Now my son, we still working on him. We still working on him.
I didn't know you had to say. Okay, got you. So the girls, they take to entrepreneurship and investing. So we not there yet.
Yeah,
it's a work in progress. You gotta get him to watch the Marvin Francois show.
Yeah.
We going.
Yeah, but he gonna be there. He gonna be there. But yeah.
So you've been mentoring now because you just touched on it from 2020. So we're going on 5 years and counting. I think, and I'm happy you brought that up because when we talk about the conversation of mentorship and just leading, I think social media makes it look a lot easier than what it actually is. It's exhausting, man. Like it's a very demanding commitment to take. Like you just took a DA. You let that arrow like you've been waiting for somebody to say like somebody. No, but it's a lot.
It is a lot, and honestly, I'm considering November being my last month.
It. Wow.
Yeah, and then January I'm gonna reevaluate some things, but it is exhausting. It is, and I think I want people to win so bad. I think I want people to win more than they want it for themselves, and I get so annoyed when even I have a lot of successful students, but it's the one or two that's not there, and I'm like, why? Like why? Yes, it's awesome. Yes.
Well, I mean, that kind of leads to my next question because it's like, even though you are speculating moving away from it now, what do you think has kept you so committed to it over the past half decade and beyond that you have been, once again, not just, all right, here's a course, go figure it out, but like, no, I'm literally going to hold your hand through this thing until you win.
So the success stories.
Okay.
Success stories. And it's so crazy because yesterday, one of my mentees, and actually grew up together, my mother and her sister was friends. And she joined my mentorship, and she said her net worth just reached over $1 million.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, you got me for another week, right? You got me for... So when I hear stuff like that, it's like, wow, people's lives is really being changed. And she was like, I would have never done this without you.
Yeah. Oof. Wow. And the reason, and I think that's important too, because I would assume most of the people you're dealing with, they are first generational
correct
wealth builders. So they're in uncharted waters. They don't really have anyone besides a Dana Christian to show them like what the process really looks like. How do you help them shift their mindset from I've been around decades of scarcity to now I have to start walking in a mind frame of abundance and understanding that like, no, I deserve to be wealthy and I deserve to be rich.
So really it's just knowing your why. And you have to want it for yourself, right? So I can't really convince you. Right? You have to really want it for yourself and believe that you can do it. So I always say it's in self because nobody ever had to motivate me. You know what I'm saying? I had kids that I had to take care of and I wanted more for them. Right? So I'm not big on the whole mindset thing. And, you know, even though I have a mindset coach that come on every Monday and talk to them, but you got to want it for yourself.
Yeah.
I can't want it for you more than you want it for yourself.
Yeah.
So it's really about people just, like I said, you have to believe in yourself and you got to want it for you and your family.
At this point in your journey, and as we start to close, with everything that you've accomplished and as far as you've gotten, what would you say is your why right now, your North Star, the thing that you're still reaching for at this part in your entrepreneurial success?
So mine is passing down generational wealth, right? Passing down generational wealth and just wanting my grandchildren to live a soft life, right? Not to have to worry about how I'm going to pay my bills or choosing. And for me, just being able to enjoy life, being able to travel, because honestly, since I was 16, taking care of kids, right? And just working. There's times that I work, you know, 2 jobs, 3 jobs one time, 5 shifts in a row, and really just enjoying life. So that's really my why, because it's like I want to be able, if I want to go to Dubai now, tomorrow, first class, and book that ticket, I want to be able to do that.
Yeah. Powerful conversation. I know we have to get you out of here. Before we do, if this was your last podcast appearance, what are some words of wisdom and inspiration that you would want to leave the people with?
Yeah. So I would say make a decision, get MAD. And MAD stands for make a decision. Make a decision that you want more for your life, more for your children's life, and believe in yourself. Believe that you deserve it. Believe that you can do it. And do it.
Simple
And it's that simple, you know, because a lot of times we overcomplicate things.
Right.
And we think that it cannot be that easy. It can be that easy. Right? And it's like you got to pick your heart. You know, the hardest thing that I ever did was to get up, go into a job that I hated.
Yeah.
That was the hardest thing that I did in my life. And this right here is a cakewalk. So you just have to believe and just do it. Just do it. And stop thinking about what's not going to work and focus on this working, and it will work.
This is Dana. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know, like I said, I know we have to get you out of here. Before we do, your camera right here, let the people know, number one, where they can find you, but even more importantly than that, how they can get in contact and connect with you.
So on Instagram, I am Dana Christian is the best way. Yeah.
You don't want to plug anything else? Just the social?
Yeah. So I am Dana Christian on Instagram. I'm having a free 3-day boot camp.
Awesome.
If you click the link in my bio, it will be in there. I'm having one the 3rd week in August, 3rd week of September, 3rd week of October, and then that might be it, y'all.
Maybe.
So hop on it.
There you go. And I'll even put the link in the description as well for the individuals that are watching here and want to jump straight to it. But thank you so much for coming on the show. And for everyone who's watching at home, thank each and every single one of you guys. If you haven't already, take a second, take a minute, take an hour out of your day right here. We're now to go ahead, hit the like button, show the episode some love, tell a friend to tell a friend to come back, rewatch it again. And as always, family, my name is Marvin Francois. That's Mrs. Dana Christian. You guys have been good. We've been great. This has been amazing. Thank you all, and God bless. Until next time, peace.